My name is Alfonso Monedero. I'm head of BIM at Heatherwick Studio, and you're watching Students' Perspective.
Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to A Student's Perspective, the weekly series that connects students with designers, manufacturers, educators, industry professionals, and design media celebrities to hear their stories on just how they've gotten to where they are now. Through our conversations, we connect the past, present, and future of design to show just how much we can learn from each other to grow towards our fullest potential without prescribed limitations. Think of A Student's Perspective as a weekly design lecture series from the student's point of view. A Student's Perspective is a division of the nonprofit University Hall of Innovation, whose goals are to connect students with the design industry through design challenges and mentorship, and a collaboration with the Marywood University Interior Architecture Program in Scranton, Pennsylvania. All interviews can be found in their video format at www.astudentsperspective.tv. For more information or sponsorship inquiries, please contact universityhallofinnovation@gmail.com. So hello and welcome back to another episode of A Student's Perspective. We are here in the UK for the BIM and Leicester conference at the Leicester School of Architecture. My name is Stephen.
I'm Miswa.
And today we are here with Afonso. Do you want to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background?
Sure. So my name is Alfonso. I am trained as an architect back in Spain. I finished architecture in 2009. I started going around the world until I started finding my place where I belong to. And that was taking me to different places like India, Chile, and then UK, where I landed in my current practice in Heatherwick.
Excellent. And so how has your personal career maybe developed from what you enjoyed in school to sort of where you are now? Like what sort of has it been a linear path? Have you been jumping? What's been happening?
It has been really far from being a linear path.
Excellent.
So while I was being in university, we were always being told that we should be opening our own practice. We need to be very artistic architects. And we had every single person in Spain just goes out of university with that in mind. I got out from university in 2009. It was a global crisis. There was no work for anybody. So I spent 3 years, let's say, trying to find myself in Spain until I just realized that I was wasting my life, my career life. And then I started deciding, okay, instead of looking for a position anywhere in Spain, let's try to find it anywhere in the world. So I started sending my CV to many places. I got some feedback from China, but at the end, this led me to India. So it's a really hard decision just to leave family behind, friends, just go out of my comfort zone, just make a backpack and fly to India. I don't regret it because that was the start of something bigger.
And how did you find maybe what you were used to or what you had expected kind of going into that? Did it meet those expectations? Was it totally different? What was that experience like?
So India as a country, it was very shocking because it was like going to the Middle Ages, but with technology. So you could see people living on the streets, but they had all the smartphone. In terms of work, it was really satisfying to see how you can start a project and finish it and see it built in 6 months. So it's a really fast pace and we're doing complicated things. So the architect that hired me, he did his master's in Switzerland. So he enjoyed working with Europeans, having that mixed culture between Europeans and Indians and merging those. So I had the opportunity to show him what I was capable of doing. Not only the design phase, but seeing that on site and finishing. So it was shocking seeing a project in Spain lasting for 5 years, even though it might be a small one, to see something in 6 months. It was completely shocking, but in a really good way.
Were there any design differences between two cultures going from Spain to India? Because the spaces are different and the way they're used are different. Have you sort of found any challenges along that way, and how did you adapt to that?
So the first thing that my boss was saying is like, don't make it too European. So that was kind of a very abstract statement. On we were doing a lot of residential for wealthy people, and they follow something called the Vasnu or Vastu. You correct me if I'm wrong. That is kind of how a house or a home should be organized around the temple, the puja. And it was completely different to what we were used to. So I had to adapt to how things were being done in India. So not only in the architecture, because we have very hot places in Spain, so we can get passive, sustainable initiatives into the project, but also into the meaningful of the spaces. And that was completely different. A house in Spain might be going around a living room. Here, everything was around the temple, inside the house.
Yeah, that had to be an amazing experience. Just that time frame of saying you might not be at one job in order to see a building get finished in the U.S. or in Europe, but you were able to kind of see those projects from the very beginning to the very end in that short time frame. It had to be an amazing learning opportunity. How did that affect as you moved on from there? Like what sort of things did you take from there? What became frustrations in that next place that you ended up?
So one thing I took from there was the fast pace of working on several projects at the same time, because all of them were going to be finished soon. And that was something I was taking into my following step. So after India, my visa was expiring, so I had to move out of the country. I came back to Spain for a couple of months to prepare for my next journey. And it was okay, should I stay in Spain, just keep looking for another opportunity? Or I have a chance to go to Chile, South America, because my brother is there. He doesn't have anything to do with architecture, but he can give me a bed and I can land somewhere like warm. So I just went to Chile. The big difference is that to India, I went with a position. To Chile, I went to look for a position. So in that sense, it was a little bit more risky because I didn't know how to find a job while I was being there. So I was working for a small practice for some months, like 6 months or so. We were doing several projects at the same time. And then I jumped to another practice where they saw my work in India and they asked me if I wanted to be their head of design, because they enjoyed the thoughts behind the residential places we're doing. So that fast pace in India was leading me to a really nice position as head of design of decent sized architectural practice. We were like 30, 35. So it's good. It's big for Chile. It might be like a small for UK, but the scale of the practices is completely different. And in that, I stayed for 2 years and I was working in 30 projects. So it was kind of more than one project per month. And that was something I was used to back in India, because I had to do a lot of different projects and moving quickly to the next stage. So that resilience and agility was helping me a lot in jumping between projects, working in the morning one project, in the afternoon in another one. And next week, you don't know what it's going to be. It's all about the unknown. So that was preparing me for that next step.
Yeah, it sounds like you lived 3 careers in those kind of short time frames. That's pretty amazing. And so with both of those firms in India and in Chile, were they mostly residential? Was it residential, commercial, large scale, small scale? How did that end of the equation kind of fit into it?
So in India, it was purely residential, like detached houses, but also a big complex. So we had a small and medium size, medium large, that in between, because it was a complex of 5 towers with a clubhouse, swimming pool, amenities. But when I moved into this other practice in Chile, were doing some residential that was getting me in there, but I had the exposure to a wide variety of projects, like hospitality, retail, master planning, mixed use, a lot of competitions that we were doing, transportation, museums. So that was giving me the opportunity of just getting out again of the comfort zone and just not do residential, just anything that could come into the studio. And I was looking for competitions myself, so I was trying to find things that I was finding interesting. Like, for example, we had to do an antenna that it had a BIM platform, but it was an infrastructure project. But it had that kind of appealing, so we could bring it.
Excellent. And so what brings us here today is the BIM conference. And at what point did you were you exposed to that as a modality that you kind of resonated with? Was that sort of throughout, or did that come along the way?
So during my time in Chile, I was joining every single piece of training that the office was offering, and they offer Rhino and Grasshopper training in parametric design, and also Revit training. So I went there to advanced Revit training. I tried to implement it in that office, but it was in a very modest way. And after a couple of years, I realized that in order to keep progressing, I need to get out of Chile. It's a very traditional country. The only way of progressing is opening your own practice. And it's difficult to get in there because they just prefer to work with people they know since childhood. So we decided, my partner and me, to move to London. And I just packed again everything in a backpack and came to London without a position and started visiting many different practices. In the first week, I realized I could not make it to head of design because I was 29 by then. So no practice would give you that position. You should have 15, 20 years of experience before they offer you that. And I was just a young lad back then. So, okay, just get something like a more humble position, whatever it is, but that it's meaningful. So I got the opportunity to work with Heatherwick as a contractor. So they were implementing BIM into the office, and they had to submit like a park in Abu Dhabi. It was a DD stage, and they didn't have anything. They had the design, but not any deliverables. So they just say, do your best. So in 3 weeks, I think it was like 3 weeks, I just modeled everything because I was fluent in Revit and I was very curious. So all these challenges of geometry, I was just searching YouTube, Google, whatever, and trying to figure out how to do it. And I just made it. So after that, they're saying, oh, you're doing a decent job. Let's move you to the next project, the 1,000 Trees. It's a project we have in Shanghai. And I was doing that project for another year and a half. And I was the only one touching Revit. Everybody else was in Rhino or AutoCAD at the time. So I was there by chance, I would say, but the chance occurred because I was getting prepared for anything to happen. So keeping an open mind was allowing me to get into here. If I was just focusing on, no, I just want to do design, I could be doing design in a much boring place than Heatherwick. Now I had to shift into more technical role or BIM role, but I am in connection with like a richer design practice.
You've taken so many different steps in your life, so many different cultures you've been exposed to. Has that kind of affected the way you design now?
So I don't design anymore, but it's opened me the mind of understanding the why. So here in Heatherwick, we have diverse people. So we have people from Asia, Africa, Europe, UK, US, South America, and we have projects worldwide. And you can be from South America and working in Asia, or you can be from Asia and working in US. Doesn't matter, because but I understand the whys of the design and why they're doing this thing in this location. So that's opening the mind of, it might not be what I'm used to back in my university days, my career in Spain was very short, but I can understand that you're doing this because that's what the location is demanding. And that helped me to have an agile process, so I'm not that rigid in the way we do BIM in the studio. I am able to adapt to different countries, different workflows, different methodologies, and levels of technology.
So something that I found really interesting in your talk this morning about Heatherwick, there were 2 points that really stuck out to me. One was the idea of using iterative ideas in multiple projects. That I don't know if that really occurred to me in larger design firms of saying, okay, yeah, we're going to see this through and use it several different ways, but it's going to change slightly with each project and whatnot until you've reached sort of the end of that road of experimentation. So that was one point. And the other one was when it seemed that you, as a studio, come to a challenge, a lot of times you design the solution to that challenge, whether it's creating a new a new program or a new software or a new something that allows you to do what you had been wanting to do. I really responded to both of those things. Can you talk a little bit about either or both of those?
Yeah, so going to your first question. So in the process of a project, we might start with 5 or 6 completely different ideas that we need to discard most of them. It's just at the end, even you explore all of them deeply, you might need to discard all of them except of one. But all those ideas, they're still good. They can be reinterpreted in a different way. So taking into example the arbor with student accommodation that we had in Wales, that was done in a very humble way. But that idea was there in our minds. Okay, we can get this idea, and now that we have a bigger project with more budget, they can afford to do it in a more complicated way. And 20 years have passed by, so we can use more advanced technology to help scaling up. There's no way we can do this in a traditional way. We need to scale up. So let's give it another try. And naturally, when you start applying that idea to the project, it's going to deviate and it's going to be evolving in a different path. When I joined the studio, I saw that we were just doing pots. But it was the pot time in the studio. So I was working in the 1,000 trees. It's a structure column with a tree on the top. We were doing the Little Island, which is a structure column with a massive pot on top. We were doing the Garden Bridge in London because the mayor at that time, he was pushing for more of these initiatives. And I was thinking we just do the same thing over and over. Well, it was because we thought there was room for improvement for that idea, or maybe not improvement, but deviation. And we say, okay, this is the end of it, which is there's no more juice inside the idea. Let's move to the next one. And then I start seeing that all of them were like these post-it notes that making these tables. And we had 3 projects of that branch, but they were solved in a different way. So, and I start seeing, and then we have other kind of project, which is the stirs. So I enjoy that we might get our projects. We don't have one single language like other design firms might have, that they're fully recognizable. You can go to Midjourney and say, give me a project of this firm, and it looks like that. We don't have that. But we have bunches of projects that they look like. Going to your second question about how we face challenges, that was. So when we have a simple brief, we make it complicated. For example, when we had the Cold Drops Yard brief, because, we just want to make a retail space. Let's try to make not just a retail space, but let's make 3 bridges connecting these 2 Victorian buildings and try to make a public realm which is covered. So we were just trying to bring complexity to the brief, so to get the client engaged, and thinking that these are the guys that can do the project. I don't want to see the design. I want to see the design process, because I can tweak. I don't like the color. I can change that. But your thinking is what matters. So when it comes to designing tools, for example, I've been an architect myself, so I know what an architect is suffering from. So because I've been there, I know what things could be helping them to achieve what they want. So back in India, I was just doing SketchUp. I could do very complicated things in SketchUp, but it's still a limited software. When I was in Chile, we were trying to do parametric design manually. Impossible to do that, but by learning new software tools, you're leveraging your design ideas. So that was what we're trying to do. Just do whatever you need, do whatever you have in your mind. We will make the tools to make that real. So the tools that you use to design should never be hindering the design process. They need to enhance it.
So your career started initially in India, where it was quite fast paced. Then moving to Chile, it was fast paced again, and then you kind of moved. It shifted to London, where you worked at Heatherwick Studio, which is quite detailed oriented firm. How did you find the difference from going to such a fast paced design ideas to something that you have to work on for quite a while to get it accurate and get the idea across?
So yeah, at the beginning I was working in projects for a long time. So in a year and a half I was working in 3 projects, but one project was taking most of that time. But then when I rejoined, I was working out of projects. So I was overviewing every single project and giving input. So that was going back to the fast pacing. So I don't get involved in a single project for a long time, but I get in contact with every single BIM and computational designer in each project to check what is that they are facing, which issues they are going through, and I can help them. So back to that fast pacing, which I enjoy much more. Just staying in one project until everything is fully detailed, fully finished. I do it if I need to, but it's not what I would choose if I have that opportunity. So in that sense, the position that I'm now, it's more aligned to my personal preferences.
Excellent. So we've asked several people this to this point, but moving forward, looking into the future, based on sort of where we are, where you've been, what you've seen been happening, what do you foretell as the next step or 2 steps from now? Like where are we? Like what's happening at that point, do you think?
So we're in the verge of a technology revolution. Everybody knows that. We just don't know what it's going to be. Everybody's talking about AI and machine learning. Yeah, we know it's going to be that, but in what form? Nobody knows. So we just need to keep an open mind and enjoy the journey, because we're going to be the ones making the revolution, like our great grandparents were doing the industrial revolution, or the into the assembly line with that part of manufacturing. So we are the people leading that part. So the only thing we can do is open the eyes and keep pushing for the unknown, which is very exciting.
Personally, is there anything that you want to happen or that you see on the horizon?
I want to take from humans the boring tasks, so they can focus in the meaningful elements.
I'm good for that. Let me know as soon as you've got that down, and I'm on board.
Yeah, like now all the strategy that we have, it's try to reduce the time of the repetitive task, automating task, and things that could be easily done by a computer. So if you have information into a spreadsheet but it's incomplete, just ask the computer to fill it for you based on the information you already done in previous projects, or fill in the gaps in that project. There's a long way. We need to do validation, and we need to make sure that you can trust the machine, that we don't do that right now. There's a lot of validation involved, but we just need to focus in what we're best at, which is being creative.
Excellent. So,
If you could go back to your young self and give yourself an advice, And if there's something you would like to change in your career, what would that be?
So I think when I started architecture, there was a lot of documents that were being taught, like, yeah, this is how we do things. This is the good architecture. This is what architecture. I would tell my younger self, be more critic with what your teachers are saying. They're just teachers. They don't have like the real truth. The real truth is there to be explored. So if you have that inquisitive mind, just keep asking back. Why did this the only way of doing this? Why we cannot do things in a different way? And now that I'm in Heatherwick, I have some projects that I was doing in university that are very close to what we're doing here, but they were always rejected by teachers that they were not embracing change. So for me, at least, coming from a very traditional architectural school, it was keep challenging because it doesn't mean that you have to follow their path. You have to make your own path.
And what would you advise yourself,
And also,
knowing everything that you know now?
and then I will say, learn parametric design from top to bottom, because that's what is leveraging your design ideas. Don't stick with AutoCAD or something which is 2D. Start thinking in three dimensionalities, because at the end we live in a three-dimensional world. We don't need to be designing in 2D. We need to think how the spaces are perceived in 3D.
It's interesting that you say that for your generation, you were taught to do 2D. For us, we were taught to do more 3D work. So it's quite interesting, the contrast.
20 years ago. So.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, and it's, as you mentioned, parametrics. It's quite, because software is like Rhino, and then you can plug in Grasshopper, and you can make absolutely anything that you want to make. So having that now, and knowing what you know now about the softwares, what would you tell your older self to learn more of, or what would you say worked out for you more?
I wish I would have learned Rhino really earlier in my career. So I learned it when I was in Chile. That was 2014. I wish I would have learned it in 2004 when I was in second year of university. At that time, we were just doing AutoCAD and maybe AutoCAD 3D, but we had Rhino 4 at that time, and it was completely useful. So I would have come back and say, learn this. This is the real thing for the future.
So learning parametrics by hand in Chile is not what you would tell yourself to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's key because you might end up having really amazing ideas, and you start trying to put that in paper, to put that on 3D, and you don't know how to start with. It's like, okay, I want this mesh to be bonding, I want this mesh to be from open to closed because there's more public space, we have more private space here. How do I do that? It's in my mind. I've seen pictures of, in that time it was Urso Candemeron doing some kind of that parametric design. I want to do the same because in my mind, architecture should be this way, but I don't have the design tools to do it, and that will never be a limitation.
Again, thinking back to your talk earlier, I think another moment that struck me was the rolling pin models and just the sheer amount of physical models, because you'd think it's like, okay, once we have everything worked out in parametric modeling and all these things, it's like we don't need to physically make it. It'll get made. But I think that level of testing and saying it's like, okay, we 3D printed this rolling pin, and then when we had to do it bigger, we had to make a thing by hand to be able to do that same thing. It's like, I think that level of investment is maybe something that students now who are only taught or are primarily taught the 3D version and those types of things, they're not necessarily seeing that amount of handwork that goes into it. And so I think that was a really refreshing thing to see, was that amount of as progressive as you can be digitally, you're still trying to progress the hand part of it and match them and work them together and make sure that it's not one outrunning the other, but they're working in tandem with each other, which was really, really nice.
Yeah, so as I was saying, we like say that we are craftsmen. So we like to touch things. Something can be looking nice on the computer screen, but that computer screen is not giving you the sense of the scale. But when you make a model, whether it's a 1 to 2000, 1 to 50, or even 1 to 1, that we do a lot of mock-ups, you start perceiving the spaces. So in the Rootmaster, we were designing that in 3D. But every time we had like some of the bus already created, we were doing a wooden model for that and sit there and see if the window is too low or it's too high, or we need to lower window to raise it so that you're not feeling that you're falling down, because we had pushback from the mayor, not the mayor, but the city saying we need these windows to be wider because we need more light. So I was saying, okay, let's build a mock-up. Let's put you inside and you tell me if they're big enough or you want them bigger. So by creating these one-to-one mock-ups, we can just reconfirm that we're in the right direction or that we need to change things. So I was showing one image of, I think it was like 100 models or something. And some of them going into 3D printing, that it was 1 to 5,000, and some of them were one-to-ones of how these columns are going to be. And then before we send them to a physical mock-up that done with concrete and everything, we could see where we want to bend them, how they're going to be perceived. And that was telling us this is not the direction, we need to change it. So every project that we do, it has workable models in every single scale. And sometimes we do like a finished and polished mock-up for the client to show, like a really nice looking model. But that's not useful for us. For us, it's the quick and dirty or those iteration models that we can do.
Just want to go back to the times when you were in India and Chile. Because you mentioned you had to do like these fast-paced projects. Have you ever encountered creativity block, or where, because you just mentioned you would do one project in the morning and one project in the evening, have you ever sort of find yourself in a situation where you kind of found it difficult to be creative or difficult to come up with different ideas because of how fast-paced the process was? So how did you handle that, and how did you overcome that?
So obviously you just encounter this kind of blocks as I don't know what to do. I mean, this is not good enough. But we were acting as a team. So I was leading the design domain and we were a team of 10. So if one was getting blocked, the other one was just pushing that gear to keep it moving, and then you just reconnect with the flow of the ideas. So obviously you sometimes get stuck, but that's the good thing about collaborating and not just working on a project on your own. That doesn't happen nowadays, that you just give in a project and just do it. I will be just doing mock-ups like the partner. Now we live in a world that when you are working in medium size or large size, even in small size projects, you are always collaborating. You might have a specialist in visualization, another one in computational design, in BIM, but all of them are feeding into that design stream. So back in the days, we were just designers, but we were doing SketchUp and AutoCAD, and at the end some Rhino and Revit. But we were just pushing the other. So when somebody's stuck, just need a little bit of push on the back and then keep with the team.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing everything with us today. We really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the conversation today, make sure to like, follow, and share. And make sure to tune in next week as the conversation continues from a student's perspective. We hope you liked this discussion with the design industry from a student's perspective. Please like, share, and comment, and stay tuned for more inspiring conversations to come.